Good evening and live from Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. This is Dr. John Stamey, and I want to welcome everyone to ScaryCast. We've got a really fun show tonight. We've got our guest is John LeMay from Roswell, New Mexico. And of course, our co host is the one and only, the Dean of ScaryCast, Dr. Trey Dunaway. How are you doing tonight, Dr. Trey?
I'm doing fine, John. Although it is pollen season in South Carolina.
It is? Well,
It is. My nose can tell you.
okay, well, I hope your nose stays well. You sound like you're doing well. And so tonight we've got from Roswell, New Mexico, the one and only John LeMay. How are you doing tonight, John?
I'm doing great. We had snow here today, so no pollen for me.
You're kidding. Snow in Roswell.
Yeah, every
What
so
does that
often.
what does that do to the UFOs? Probably keeps them from flying around, doesn't it?
Yeah, yeah.
Well, that's good. We're so glad to have you. You're a great recurring guest and a lot of fun to have you on. As so that everyone knows, John is a well-known author. He has written a number of books on the movie biz. He's written books on UFOs. He's written books on the paranormal. And I was lucky enough to have a story featured in his one of his most recent books or magazines called Strange West, and it was a lot of fun writing that. And thanks for having me in there, John. So what are you working on these days? You're always working on a literary project.
Yes, my goal from April to December is to put out one short book every month. And so I've got my one for April done. It's not real scary, but it's got some esoteric stuff in there. It's called Legend and Lore of the Lost Atoms. The Lost Atoms, in this case, referring to the Lost Atoms diggings. Just a classic treasure story. It's this canyon of gold located somewhere along the New Mexico Arizona border, but it's a lost treasure. Henceforth it's lost. Nobody knows where it is, but there was a lot of legend and lore around this gold. So, there's been other books on it before, but my book focuses on the strangest stuff about the Lost Adams Canyon. But that's not what we're going to talk about today. But we will be talking about Native American. I don't know if I want to call it mythology. It might be Native American truth, couldn't it, John?
It really could be. So let's get on to that. So what is our topic for tonight? You are our teacher as we open up this session of ScaryCast.
Well, John and I were talking on the phone off of the show, as we often do, and I just mentioned to him some research I was doing into the hero twins of Mesoamerica and North America, just for fun. And you thought that was an interesting topic and thought maybe we could just talk about it on air for a while. But the hero
Absolutely.
twins, yeah, they're just in everything. I mean, there's hero twins the world over, but they're more prevalent amongst Mexico, Mesoamerica, South America, and North America more so than the other continents for some reason. Like I said, they do have them. They have hero twins in Asia and in Africa, but it's just again in North America, there's tons of them. Every single tribe has their own variation of the myth. And Dr. Trey, did you get a chance to look at any of that just for fun?
Yeah, I enjoy reading about Indian culture, and I look forward to it tonight.
Yeah, so we might actually, as opposed to the hero twins, might actually just start with Native American creation myths, which I find pretty fascinating because there's so many different tribes, but you can find common themes and threads in all their different stories. And what I think is so interesting about the Native American creation stories is, well, as opposed to the biblical creation story of God created the world and destroyed it in a flood, the Native Americans have multiple destructions. And each destruction marks the start of a new world. So, according to most Native American beliefs, we're actually living in the fourth or the fifth world. Whereas biblically, it's more like the first and the second world, or I think they call it antediluvian in the case of the pre flood. But, in terms of the Native American belief, the Great Flood was only the last destruction. Prior to that, there were all these other ones, and they're very interesting. The Hopi, for instance, one of their previous destructions was Big Freeze, in other words, the Ice Age. The Aztecs have a previous destruction that was fire from the sky, which sounds an awful lot like, the meteor that killed the dinosaurs, or the asteroid, I mean, that killed the dinosaurs. So it's, it kind of explains things a little better, perhaps.
Well, that's extremely interesting, John. Yeah, there are a number of creation myths. The one that I like is from a California tribe. I can't remember their name, but I certainly remember the story because I'm the author of Lizard Man Companion. And Lizard Man apparently came about as the creator of thunder.
Hmm.
And tribe, and he was out there and named the god of thunder. Now I don't know if you've heard of that, but that is a well-known myth from from the
Hmm.
Indians in Northern California. So I mean, have you ever heard of that one?
No, I hadn't.
Well,
I've
I've
heard
got a
of
copy
this.
of
Yeah.
I've got it somewhere, but and I'll find you a copy and copy it for you.
Well, they also have in Los Angeles the story of the underground city of the lizard people, but they weren't when they said lizard people, they didn't mean like the reptilian aliens like we think of, but they were just a tribe associated with lizards that had this underground city. So I wonder if that could tie
Right.
into that in any way.
Well, I believe it could because that's part of a myth that says there were three lizard style cities.
Hmm.
One was up north, which we believe to be Mount Shasta in that area. And there's talk about lizards up there. Then there's the Los Angeles one that in 1930.
Oh, did you lose Dr. John too, Trey?
Yeah, John's fading out again.
Yeah, well, I think I can pick up for him and maybe he'll butt back in. But yeah, the Lizard City was discovered underneath Los Angeles in the mid 1930s. And if I remember right, they claim that the peoples created their tunnels through the use of chemicals or something like that. They burned through the ground and the earth through chemicals. But okay, it looks like we have Dr. John back.
Dr. John's back. Yeah, I was going to say that they did some. There was a fellow that came in and he convinced several financiers to finance him to dig down into the lizard, into the to the cities, and he had a map of what the cities looked like, and from above, the cities looked like they had the shape of a lizard, and then there was supposed to be one near the California slash Mexican border. And, they never found that. But there were supposedly three of them. Um, we don't know which ancient civilizations they were tied to, but there are certainly records and certainly talks about them, and they were very interesting. They never found them. They found some things, but not others, and it was very difficult because the water kept encroaching on the digging. I mean, that's what I learned. In fact, you can find a little bit about all this in one of my books. Look Up in the Sky. I try to talk a little bit about this, and it's really interesting. I wish we knew more. I'll come out to Mount Shasta for you. And John, you and I can go up there. Dr. Trey, we'll get you out there, and Janie, your wife, and we'll all go up to Mount Shasta and see what we can find.
So there's an interesting thread too in the form of Native Americans believed that they emerged from within the earth Have you all heard that before in their stories that they climbed to the surface world from kind of a hollow earth?
No, but we need to get Brooks Agnew around to talk about that. He was just on last week talking about the Hollow Earth. He's one of the big
Huh.
proponents of that, and he likes to. He's directing an expedition here in a couple of years up toward the North Pole to try to get more information the uh, about the Hollow Earth.
Well, John, in your research, how there must be patterns of origin stories, and how many Native American groups uh, felt that their origin became from crawling out of a hollow spot in the earth versus other ways to
Hmm.
appear.
Most of them did, and even the Aztecs, they had this belief that they came from a spot somewhere in North America, and they called it Azatlan, and it was a system of seven caves. And that ties in an interesting way to the conquistadors. So when the conquistadors came to North America, they would always ask the Native Americans about these seven cities of gold.
Hmm.
And it seems that they confused the seven cities of gold with the seven caves of the Aztec. So they would always tell the Spaniards, "Oh yeah, there's the seven caves of gold out here." But some people think they just told the Spaniards that to kind of shoo them along and get them out of their hair. In other
Yeah,
words,
yeah. Say,
yeah,
well, we can give you directions to the caves, but it's not around here.
yeah. It was a great ploy, excellent ploy. Yeah. But I think it was really funny because the Spaniards and the Aztecs both kind of mistook each other for different things. Because when Cortez arrived on the shores of Mexico, they thought he might be the second coming of Quetzalcoatl.
Right.
And then, Cortez, he thought he would find the seven cities of gold in North America. And there's so much history to it. But yeah, all of the Native American tribes, they seem to think they emerged from somewhere inside of the earth. And there's also a commonality that to escape the Great Flood, some people, or maybe I should specifically say the giants, they claimed, hid in caves while the surface world flooded. I mean, I would think the water would seep down into some of the caves too, but they must have had some secret
Yeah,
area.
yeah. I wouldn't think a cave would be the place to hide if there's a big flood.
Yeah, but that is the legend. Like then the Aztec told of seven giants that hid underground, and I believe they built the big pyramid in I think it's Cholula or someplace. I can't remember.
Is that near the Grand Canyon?
Not the Cholula pyramid in Mexico, but yeah, and
Oh,
then
okay.
there's the story of the Egyptian cavern in the Grand Canyon too. So
So it's all somewhat tying together
hmm.
with, and yeah, I mean the giants. I mean the giants that I'm familiar with are the ones in Nevada that
Hmm.
have been
Yeah.
found. And this, of course, as usual, the Smithsonian came out, took the bones, and off they go, and we've never seen them again. But the giants are definitely red-headed giants. Is that correct, John?
Yeah, and the giants the world over seem to be red-headed for some reason. I don't know why. That's even as late I think as the alleged Kandahar giant. I think it had red hair too.
Well, I'll tell
Well,
you what.
there is a certain mystique about people with red hair.
Yeah.
Well,
does
there is.
Doctor Trey have red hair as well?
Well, it's more gray than
Yeah.
red today, but yes, yes, indeed.
And I love the story about Glastonbury Abbey up in Scotland, where they found an 11-foot tall man buried with a 5-foot tall woman,
Hmm.
and the legend goes that that is King Arthur
Hmm.
and that is Guinevere. And I'm
Hmm.
gonna tell you what, for for a boy to have pulled a sword out of a stone, being a giant would have been helpful, don't you
Yeah.
think, John LeMay?
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
definitely.
but I think if Arthur was 11 foot tall, people would probably have heard about that.
Well, they
Well,
think a lot of the ancient heroes might have been giants like Hercules and some of the other ones.
Mm.
and of course, the one in the Bible, Goliath. I mean, he is plainly listed as a giant, and David took him out. Giants were apparently not as far fetched or whatever as our religion these days want to make it. They were all over.
I guess you'd have to really look for a definition of giant in each culture to know
Hmm.
exactly how large a giant is.
Well, that's true because I mean the last time I was in England, I saw a an area where they kept prisoners, and the prisoners would have to have been about 4 feet, 4.5 feet tall. And I said, "Is that the case?" And they said, "Yes." The prisoners were about 4 feet tall. That's how tall the British people were long, long time,
Hmm.
1,000 years ago. So, somebody 6 feet tall, which is fairly regular to see somebody 6 feet tall, would have been considered a giant. Dr. Trey,
Yep.
that's a very,
Yep.
very well
Giantism is a relative thing.
You've always got the right answer, Dr. Trey. You really do. That's
Well, if
so.
I
So,
don't, I always act like I do.
Yeah.
John LeMay, we're going to have to remember that one because giantism is relative, and that's
Yeah.
a great point.
Well, it's
So,
do you identify as a giant? I mean, I guess you could identify as one.
Well, I'm personally not a giant, and as I've gotten older, I've gotten shorter. But for this weekend. We have the uh, the Irish Fest Camden this weekend, and I am your jumbo leprechaun, but I'm jumbo, not so much giant.
Yeah.
Leprechauns come in different sizes: small, medium, large, and I'm a jumbo leprechaun. So
okay, and you're very adept at being a great leprechaun. People love you, and you come out with an orange beard and orange hair, and it's just very catchy.
oh yeah, it's definitely leprechaun-y.
I just thought of a parallel we could draw for our listeners that they probably don't hear very often. Did you know there's a connection between giants and little people, and that connection is always angels? Did you know that?
Oh,
No,
oh, I see.
tell us
So,
about that, John.
sure. Well, so biblically speaking, the idea is that giants were the result of angels who slept with human women, and for some reason that produced giant offspring. Well, oddly enough, by the same token, the little people, whether they be fairies, leprechauns, here in New Mexico they call them duendes, kind of like gremlins, but the idea is that the little people were some of the angels that were falling from heaven. And this is purely folkloric, but the idea is that the angels that fell to earth became the demons, and then God shut the gates of heaven to prevent more angels from falling out. But the angels that were caught in between heaven and earth when they were falling, for some reason, became the little people or fairies. I don't know why. I don't know how on earth they came up with that story or what basis and any type of truth it has, but that's just the weird connection between giants and little people. And there's also another one. For some reason, they believed that the ghost of a giant would have to come back in the form of a little person, and they called that a spriggan in Ireland.
Oh, well, that makes sense, kind of in a way. If you're a ghost of a giant, you're not
Hmm.
going to be as full statured, perhaps.
Yeah.
So it's more compact.
Yeah, well, that is very interesting, John. Where did you get this knowledge? Where did this research come from? Which book were you working on?
I was working so for the duendes, which is again like the Hispanic version of the gnomes or the gremlins, whatever you want to call them. I was doing my book of New Mexico witches, and the duendes are mentioned quite a bit. You know what they do, John, is they hide things around your house. If you can't find something, the duende did it, according
Well,
to
I mean,
Hispanic folklore.
they're here all the time
Yeah,
at my house.
Yeah, I couldn't find my headphones tonight, and I think the duende must have stuck it where I couldn't find it, but
yeah.
I found it.
Well, it's funny. I have to make it a point to remember where I put something
Hmm.
so that I can find it next. Otherwise, if I don't, if I don't really remember where I put it, I forgot it, and I can't find it. And so the duendes are. I'll talk to them tonight and see if they're here.
Yeah.
But no, that's really interesting because I have lots of things vanish, and then I remember where I put them. So the forgetful duendes. Okay,
Yeah.
but this is a really interesting talk. I mean, where if I wanted to find out more information about all of this, I mean, this is really interesting to me. Where would I go look for? Would it all be in New Mexico? Your book, New Mexico Witches, or where would it be exactly?
When I research this stuff, I try to find the oldest stuff I possibly can. And on some level, academics roll their eyes at the old stuff because to them, those people were uneducated and they were superstitious. But whatever you think of that, they were still the closest to the time period. So, I even though today we can look at stories of the seven cities of gold and just say, well, they never existed, I still kind of want to hear what Cortez himself said, or Coronado, or whoever lived back then, and just get it straight from them. So, anytime I research old folklore, the older the better. So, a lot of it is out of print books, old newspapers, newspapers.com or newspaper archive. They used to do stories on folklore back then quite a bit as well, so those are very useful. So that's what I use, and that's where I stumbled across all this stuff. And like the hero twins, the hero twins commonly killed the giants. That's what their job was. Um,
And that's across different tribes of Native Americans. That was and North South American Indians. The,
yes,
the
that's
twins would
correct.
the twins were giant killers.
Yes, typically. So I was looking for parallels between the Native American beliefs and the Bible. Because they have the Great Flood. A lot of them have only one God that they either call the Great Spirit. The Apaches call him Usin. So I was just like looking through their different beliefs, and they really don't have a Christ figure except for the hero twins. So instead of one savior figure, they have two, and they're twins.
Hmm.
And a lot of times they represent some sort of duality. Sometimes instead of them being the hero twins, actually only one of them is a hero and the other one is a villain. That can be interesting. But typically, both of them are the hero. And so their story, everybody's got a different story, but typically they do have a virgin birth. And then their mother is killed by an evil monster, and they go out to avenge her. And in my neck of the woods, in Roswell, New Mexico, our closest tribe is the Mescalero Apache. And their story is that there was a holy woman called White Painted Woman who lived on Sierra Blanca Mountain. And she gave birth miraculously to this little boy called Born for Water. And I think she got pregnant by the rain or something like that. So he was associated with water. And his twin brother was killer of enemies. And together they would go off and hunt the monsters together. And it correlates pretty strongly also with the Navajo. They have a similar story. And what's cool about the Navajo is they used a lot of our more striking formations here in the Southwest as the backstory for the hero twins and their battle with this giant called Yetzel. So if you've ever been to the petrified forest of Arizona, according to the Navajo, those aren't petrified trees. Those are the bones of the giant Yetzo that they killed. And similarly, here in New Mexico, we have this big lava flow outside of Grants called the Malpai. And they claim, well, it's not lava, that's the giant's blood when the hero twins killed him.
Well, I understand also in Indian cultures that dinosaurs or remnants of dinosaur skeletons were some of the mythological creatures they talked about. And this could have given rise to some of the monsters and mythology in the Native American cultures.
Yes, one of my favorite books that I'll plug is Adrian Mayer's book, Fossil Legends of the First Americans. That is such a fascinating read. It's something that skeptics and believers alike can really enjoy. And by believers, I mean believers in the supernatural, because you get some great stories about mythology that you can either believe or disbelieve. But like I said, if you're a skeptic and it's just a bunch of legends about dinosaur bones, it's still very interesting. So that book is a very useful resource to me. I can't heap enough praise on it. But yeah, the hero twins, they're just in every single tribe as far as I can tell. I mean, I'm sure there's some where they're not, but typically they've always got these miraculous twins that went on a mission to kill all the monsters, and it's just, very interesting.
In
You know,
in the mythology, when you're looking at stars, are there any constellations that were interpreted as the twins, Gemini, or but in Native American cultures, were any star signs of these twins?
No, not that I know of, but I know John was comparing them to either the Gemini or maybe Orion or somebody, weren't you, John?
well, I talked a little bit about them being part of the Gemini twins, but I had a different question, and David, who is credited with the destruction of Goliath, who would his hero twin have been? I am not familiar with the fact that he had a twin. So
Well,
he
he
must have.
didn't. He didn't, but here's something interesting. Because, like I said, the hero twins were kind of the Christ figures or the Savior figures. They weren't perfect, but
Right.
they were the hero saviors of the Native Americans. Well, in terms of Apocrypha, in the Bible, Thomas means twin. And some people think he was the twin of Jesus. But again, that's just Apocrypha. So that's, maybe the only biblical version of the hero twins. But again, that's all apocryphal.
That's interesting, and I'm going to jot that down and try to do a little bit of research. I might
Hmm.
talk with Ben Villars, who is our expert on gematria. So Thomas,
Yeah, and that's for sure.
less
That's not
than
hearsay. Thomas means twin. And he did have a twin brother, but the official Bible, the canonical Bible, never said who his twin was.
wow. Now, Dr. Trey, do you? I mean, I know you're fairly literate in the Bible and everything. Do you know much about that? I'm sorry for asking you this on the spot, but do you know much about that particular topic?
No, but there are references in the Bible where it talks about a brother of Jesus. But I don't think Jesus was a twin. I think that was a single birth. I think that would
Wow.
have kind of changed the dynamics of Christianity too, having twins.
Hmm.
But now Thomas could have been a twin. I mean,
Well,
who knows?
right now, and please help me out. And I'm sorry that I'm having a problem remembering. There was not a disciple named Thomas, was there?
Yes, there
Yes,
was. Yeah.
yes, there was. Thomas is the
Okay.
one that was not. He did not see the resurrected Christ, and he he was doubting Thomas. He didn't believe the
Oh, that's
disciples,
right.
and then Christ had to appear to him, where he then and Christ said, "Look at my hands, look at the hole in my side. Put your finger there," to prove that he was the risen Christ. So that was Thomas, the doubting Thomas.
Oh, okay, okay.
But I
Thank
don't know
you.
anything about the twin business.
Right. The one disciple that I am familiar with is the one that I believe I had a miraculous experience and met in Asheville, North Carolina. I mean, within the last year, which was St. Philip, and it was amazing. Those guys are real. Those disciples are real. They do appear from time to time. So does the Virgin Mary. The Virgin Mary appeared in 1917 as part of the Fatima prophecy, and the miracle of the sun is attributed to her. And I am absolutely a firm believer that the miracle of the sun came about because of the Virgin Mary, and uh, and the fact that France became Christian because of the Virgin. I mean, there are many stories of how can I put it? There are many stories of that whole cadre of people associated with Christ that are associated with miracles, and they are. Now, Dr. Trey, you're what? Episcopalian or Lutheran? Which are you?
Catholic, Catholic.
You're cat. Oh, great, you're Catholic. And what I like about the Catholics is that they have so many great stories of the saints, don't they?
Well, yeah, you got to kind of be canonized. My wife is
Right.
up for canonization for putting up with me for so long.
She's lucky to be putting up with you. But it's really interesting. I'm Methodist and we don't have any of that. We have none of that. We have Jesus and we have God and the Holy Ghost, and that's it. We don't have any saints like you do. And I think, from what I know, I think saints, I'm sorry for being so non liturgical, but I think saints are so cool. The fact that they come around. Now, you do have and I'm really talking like I don't know anything, but you do speak about saints being seen today, or is that correct? They do come back and help people, right?
Well, a saint, to put it simplistically, would be an intercessor.
Okay. All right.
So, there's all this weird stuff about Catholics and Mary. If Mary is the mother of God, she could intercede for you. You don't have to have that, but just think about your own life. If you knew you were in trouble with your dad, you thought maybe your mom could help break the news or whatever, yeah, it's an intercession. Hey, look out for me. Put in a good word for me. Now that's a very simplistic, and I'm sure the catechists would just go nuts if they heard me say stuff like that. But that's the basic idea. And so
Okay.
saints are. It goes through a canonical process where they have to have verified miracles. They don't necessarily have to reappear, but they have to be attributed to at least 3 miracles, and then the church puts them through the paces to make sure they're real saints. And evidently, something happens where you can get demoted. Used to be Saint Christopher was the saint of travelers, but evidently some group decided he wasn't a saint anymore. So I don't know what you are, a former saint, previously known as, I don't know.
I think you're a saint.
There you go.
In my opinion, and that is what the Greek Orthodox Church says. Once you're a saint, you're always a saint.
It's kind of
And
like being a Marine or a surgeon.
right, I was going to talk about Saint Cyprian, but we'll leave Saint Cyprian to another time. Dr. Trey will have uh, our buddy the sorcerer from Alabama on, and we'll talk about Saint Cyprian, and you and I will probably enjoy that. We'll probably have to do a little bit of research before we have Jason on, but he's very interesting.
Well,
We've had
John LeMay, to get back to the twins in Native American cultures, do you find a lot of similarities in creation stories or in other mythological characters in those cultures where there are a fair amount of overlap, or are there a lot of divergences?
They are just all over the place. Like, according to the Navajo, their father was literally the sun, as in, the sun in the sky. But then others, they kind of make him sound like Thor because they were given the power of thunder and lightning to slay the monsters with. And that's another one of the great legend in Adrienne Mayer's book is she was talking about the bone lands and the badlands of South Dakota where they have so many fossils. And the legend there was that the gods hurled down thunderbolts to kill the monsters and make the world habitable for everyone. And actually, another cool thing I learned from Mayer's book was that thunderbirds were basically a lot of times good monsters. They were the good monsters that would slay bad monsters, and they weren't just called thunderbirds because they were so big. They could actually shoot lightning from their bodies, which I thought was pretty cool.
Yeah, I recently read something. I can't remember where I read it. I don't have enough detail to even bring it up, but it was about the mythology of the Thunderbird, and it wasn't just a hood ornament. It was quite involved, and they could do all sorts of things, and they had relationships with humans in part of that mythology. Very interesting. Well, if you don't know, then you devise ways to tell a story, to fill in those gaps.
now, Dr. Trey, and John, please tell us a little bit more about the Thunderbird because I'm about to make a connection. Please, one of you tell us a little bit more about the Thunderbird. Because we've all heard about it. It's a great character.
Well, some people think it was like just a big eagle that got struck by lightning and that encouraged the legend. Other people, like cryptozoologists, they think it was a surviving teratorn or a pterodactyl, and it was just an awesomely large bird. Like I think in Alaska they had a legend that it plucked a whale from the ocean and flew it off to its nest, and that's how big it was. So basically, it was just a really big bird. Is that what you'd say too, Dr. Trey?
Yeah, and I can't. It was a book of fiction I was reading, but it talked about the Thunderbird, and I didn't realize there's so much involved with the Thunderbird.
Well, I will say this. There seems to be when you guys started mentioning the Thunderbird, it occurred to me that we have a modern version of the Thunderbird, and I believe you'll say, "Oh my goodness, this needs to be explored more." But that is the Mothman. The Mothman
Hmm.
is a large winged creature
Yeah.
that I claim to have seen, that a lot of people have seen, and who tried to save the people of Point Pleasant, West Virginia. But the Mothman seems to be, and I've already got here on my notes, need to, John LeMay and Dr. Dre, we need to talk about that. Some of the similarities. John Keel's book, Mothman Prophecies, is incredible, but the fact that there seems to be a bird like creature that tried to help.
Hmm.
So I'm sorry. I just think it's important. But then, of course, you get into the Men in Black and you
Yeah.
get into all kinds of stuff with the Mothman. So anyway, I'll leave it at that and leave this as a mention on ScaryCast.
Yeah.
But maybe we'll talk about this. It's just it's an amazing thing. So, Dr. Trey, do you have any more recollections the about the Thunderbird?
No, no, I really don't. Like I said, it was a novel, and one of the characters in it is an American Indian, and he was telling someone about the Thunderbird. I don't remember the details.
Well, some more, I think, really interesting wild history that can tie into this is this weird misunderstanding where it came to be believed that Emperor Montezuma from Mexico was this mythical hero to the Native Americans of New Mexico, and that Montezuma was actually born up here where I am, and he went down to Mexico later. Have y'all? So y'all have probably heard of Montezuma's Castle in Arizona,
Yes,
Yeah.
and have you ever wondered why it's called Montezuma Castle?
I don't know why it's called Montezuma's
Yeah, well,
Castle.
the
I've
thing
been
is,
Yeah,
there,
I don't know.
but I
I've
don't
heard of it.
remember knowing why it was called
yeah.
Montezuma's Castle.
So back, in the old days of the Spanish conquistadors, and even into the Old West, there was this firmly held belief that the Aztecs were directly related to the Pueblo Indians of New Mexico and Arizona. And the real story is this: the Pueblo peoples of New Mexico had a legend of a Christ-type figure who had a virgin birth. His name was Poseyemu, and he was, again, just a miraculous birth. He became a medicine man and a great leader in New Mexico. And so the story went, a great big eagle came for him one day, and he got on its back and he flew it all the way down to Mexico, and then founded Mexico City where the Aztecs were. And that was the Pueblo Indians version of the Aztecs. That wasn't really their version necessarily. But to be clear, his name for many years was always Poseyemo. Well, during the Mexican American War of the 1840s, and that's when Texas and New Mexico and Arizona and all those places finally became a territory of the United States, and in the war with Mexico. So the Mexican government wanted to get the Native Americans on their side. And how they did that was they forged a document that claimed that Poheyemu was really Montezuma, and that Montezuma, their great leader from Mexico, was actually born, in New Mexico, because they thought, well, that would make the Native Americans sympathetic to them, and maybe they would rally for Mexico as opposed to the United States. So basically, they used this old time mythology as wartime propaganda, which I just think is really interesting, and that's why we have things like Montezuma Castle and Montezuma Well that have nothing to do with Montezuma.
Hmm. Well, when you talk about using propaganda to push something, the whole Midnight Ride of Paul Revere was at the time of the Civil War. And when that poem was written, it was mainly expressed to say that one man can make a difference. And that was the idea behind that poem that resurrected the Midnight Ride of Paul Revere, when actually there were lots of different riders. It just wasn't Paul, but it worked better in the poem for propaganda purposes to just show that one man can make a difference. And this is when they were having problems drafting people for the Union Army. So, given an opportunity, people will spin a story to
Yeah.
serve their purposes, and that's never changed.
And that's a story I've never heard, and I do want to. I've already got Paul Revere down. I mean, these are great things that you'd think that you heard in the sixth or seventh or eighth grade about history, and they never talked about it.
When you talk about why the poem was written the way it was and how it was promoted, it's all Civil War. It was not Revolutionary War.
Really? Yeah, I noticed you said that, and I was just wondering, did you really mean revolutionary? So that was really a Civil War thing?
It was a Civil War era poem, and it was written to show how one man, Paul Revere, made a difference as a patriot to his country. And likewise, you, in the time of the Civil War, can make a difference as a patriot to your country in the same way. So that's all pretty much documented and the real deal. John LeMay, I was just thinking, I watched something. My brother told me about it, and I tracked it down, and I think it was on PBS, and it talks about breaking the Mayan code. The 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 the, the cryptography that was used, who was really developed by one young man, that Mayan writing is now translatable. And I was just wondering, with that advent, and it's been out for a while now. Have you done any research on the Mayans and with their mythology and how that might tie into North American? Well, I guess the whole thing's North America, but how that might tie into Native American mythology with the twins? Is there any? Have you ever had any exploration of the Mayan mythology?
Yes, so actually the Mayan hero twins are the ones that have the most amount of material on them.
Ah,
Yeah, they're really interesting. In fact, they have two sets of hero twins. They have the original, and then they have the sons of one of the hero twins. But yeah, theirs is the most detailed. Their main villain, they have several, but their first main villain is this bird named Seven Macaw, who is kind of like Lucifer, I guess, from the Bible. You know, he's like a bright, shining star, and he wants everything to be about him. And they basically kill him with a dart from a blowgun, and he's their first monster that they kill. And then they have to journey into the underworld to fight some other monsters. And one of those monsters is some sort of a bat god deity. And what was his name? It started Kamzats or something like that. And he was one of the lords of the underworld. So it's the classic story that the hero has to travel into the underworld or to hell and fight the bad guys and avenge their dead father. And so there's a lot of traces of the hero's journey that Joseph
right,
Campbell
right.
organized. And yeah, so it's yeah, very detailed classic story.
Well, now that they can decode Mayan writing, there might be more stuff for you there.
Yeah. Yeah, the hero twins don't get used a whole lot in fiction. Actually, I think the From Dusk Till Dawn TV show used them, and I can't remember who else has ever endeavored to actually use them, but not very many people.
Did we did we lose John? I
Maybe
heard a
so.
noise and now he's blinked off.
Okay.
I hope the
I
earth didn't yawn open and swallow him. Oh,
yeah.
there
Oh,
he
he
is
is.
again.
Well, while we wait for Dr. John, you talked about the Earth yawning open.
Yes.
That's an interesting belief that the Apache had. So the Apache, they had one god. His name was Usan. They didn't necessarily think he was the sun, but they kind of associated him with the sun in the sky.
Uh-huh.
And because the sun was golden, that meant gold was sacred. And so that's why the Apache really had a problem with people digging into the earth to get at the gold. If you found gold above ground that the earth had already yielded, that was okay. But if you dug into the earth, they believed that Usan or the mountain spirits would send an earthquake to destroy everything. So that's why the Apache didn't like you to mine for gold.
Oh, isn't that interesting?
Yeah. So I talk about that quite a bit in my book, Legend and Lore of the Lost Atoms. I'll probably put that out in April. Because the story goes that this Lost Canyon of Gold was guarded by the Apache, and at one point a great earthquake came and swallowed up the canyon. And if people aren't really familiar with that, there's a Gregory Peck super western, like it's an epic western called McKenna's Gold. Have you ever heard of that one?
No, I haven't. Tell me about McKenna's.
It was a flop at the box office. It's too bad, but it is based on, I don't know if we should call it the true story or the true legend of the lost Adams Gold. But just a big movie. Had Omar Sharif in it. Had, I think it was Julie Newmar, who was Catwoman on the Batman TV show. I think she was in that.
I remember Catwoman.
Yeah. Yeah, so that was just, yeah, if you want to see a film adaptation of the story of the Adams Gold, it's McKenna's Gold with Gregory Peck and Omar Sharif, and it's
And give me the plot rundown.
well, the plot is there's this group of miners that they're lost in the wilderness, and they meet this half Hispanic, half Indian man who claims that he can guide them to this canyon of gold, and all he wants is a couple of rifles and horses. And so he leads them to the canyon as promised, and they go in there and they start, panning for gold in the river, and everybody's fine with that. The Apache came along and told them, this is our land, but we're okay with you getting some gold. Just don't dig into the earth and don't go above the sacred waterfall.
No.
And you know what happens next? Of course, they went above the sacred
Of
waterfall.
course, of course. The apple. They had to
Yes,
eat the apple, didn't they? They couldn't have just left it
exactly.
well enough alone. They had to go for it.
Exactly. And to their credit, they did find more gold beyond the waterfall, but the Apache did find out. They came in, they killed everybody, and the lone survivor was this one prospector named Adams. And nobody knows his first name. It's just Adams, and that's why it's called the Lost Adams Diggings. So basically, though, McKenna's Gold is about Gregory Peck's character searching for the lost canyon of gold that's quote unquote guarded by the Apache spirits. And they find the canyon. Then at the end of the movie, the canyon starts to shake and collapse. And that was, again, a really big movie. I think they filmed it in something called Cinerama, one of those really extra big widescreen deals. So it's, kind of a forgotten Western, but it's pretty cool. And I think John's back. He didn't get swallowed
John,
up.
John is back. Can you hear me?
Yes,
Yes.
we can hear you, John.
Well, that's great. That was interesting. Um, I'd like to. It's funny. Whenever you and I, John, get on these talks on ScaryCast, I get a list of things that I want to
Yeah.
research because they're a lot of fun.
They
And
are, yeah.
and now when if you don't reminding me, since I wasn't quite back on, what was the year that the Adams Treasure with Gregory Peck made?
Oh, the story, the original legend supposedly happened in 1864, and the movie was made in the late 1960s, I think 68 or somewhere thereabouts.
Okay, can we find it somewhere like on Netflix or somewhere?
I think if you want to rent it, it's on Amazon Prime, for rental or purchase, and they have a nice, good transfer of it. Because I used to have this old DVD of it, but it really wasn't the best transfer. But I bought it digitally on Prime recently, and they have this really pristine, good print and the full widescreen, so it was kind of a better experience watching it over Prime digitally as opposed to my old DVD of it.
Okay, well that's great. I'll definitely take a look at that.
Yeah. Well,
All
and
right, well,
actually, John, my novel, that this Once Upon a Time in Fort Sumner, it also deals with the Lost Adams diggings and the Hero Twins in one book.
right, and I've got it sitting over there, and
Yeah.
I hate to tell you this, I've only gotten through the first chapter
Oh no.
because it's been a little bit busy trying to get things
Yeah.
done. But I tell you what, Dr. Trey, we're going to let you have the last word and the last question for John LeMay. because we're about to run out of time, and we want a distinguished dean of ScaryCast to finish this wonderful interview up.
Well, John, I just I haven't been on with you in a while, and it was really nice being with you again for an
Yeah, you
hour.
too, Dr. Trey.
And I really did enjoy hearing about Native American mythology. There's that's a lot of culture there, and a lot of it's been lost
Hmm.
when Columbus dropped by. There were like 10 million Native
Yeah.
Americans, and not too long after, there were about a million with disease and everything, and we've lost so much of that culture. It's nice to be able to review some of it, and I'm glad you're writing books on it, so people in the future will know if it what existed here before the white man.
Yeah, thank you. I probably will do a whole book on the Hero Twins one day because I don't think anyone's done an entire volume just on them. So if I have time, that might be one of my future projects.
I think that'd be great. Great having you back.
Great to be here, always.
Well, I tell you what, we'll see if John wants to come back the beginning of next month, and Dr. Trey we'll get to add lots of great culture to what we ask him. I mean, it's always good to have John. I mean, I'm lucky. I talk to him a lot, and he's just so interesting, so well read about this culture, and it's just wonderful to have him here. So all I got to say is thanks, John, for being here. You're an incredible guest, and we look forward to having you back in about a month.
That
Dr.
sounds good.
Trey and Dr. Trey, you're just a wonderful co-host, and thank you very much for being here with us. You're the best, and we hope everybody things go well for everyone. And I'll say on behalf of everyone on ScaryCast. And now, by the way, Mark Johnston is scheduled to return next week, and that's going to be a lot of fun. Our next guest will be Ryan Ryan Tremblay, who's the host of Monster Radio. He'll be back with us on Sunday night. But otherwise, keep tuned to ScaryCast. Stay on the Facebook page, stay on everything, and find out what's going on. So I want to say thanks to everyone. It's really great having all of you here. And we'll see you next week. Same bat time, same bat channel
Yeah.
on ScaryCast. Take care, everyone.
All
Bye.
right. Good night.
Bye.